But hey, I wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you guys for joining my financial freedom wealth workshop provided by me, Angel Hernandez from the Mortgage Finders. So this is big for me in 2024. Just some key points that we're going to kind of talk about is how to build a strong financial foundation, right? It's definitely important with everything that we do as we're getting into obviously the very first step we want everybody to do is home ownership. So there's some key points that you want to do in order to get into home ownership, and then after home ownership, things that you want to do as well. So I want to go over a few things. These are the 6 steps that I highly recommend for financial freedom. These are the things that I obviously preach and talk to a lot of the clients when we start out with their search for home ownership. The biggest thing that you want to do, where I see a lot of people are not doing, in area and opportunity, is that you need to track everything. A lot of us, we don't track anything. We just go basically get our paychecks, and then from our paychecks, we're just buying things without knowing how much our expenses are, what we're paying, and where everything is going. So you want to make sure you track everything. Biggest way you can track a lot of things is I completely understand that a lot of people use their check cards, right? I highly recommend use your credit cards. There's some good credit cards out there that actually help you with budgeting, and they give you a whole breakdown. They give you a whole breakdown of everything that you're spending on a monthly basis. So you get an idea of where all your expenses are going. So I don't recommend for you to get a lot of credit cards. You definitely want to start off with 2 credit cards and want to make sure that those credit cards are paid off every month, so you have a zero balance. So a lot of you guys, do you guys currently use credit cards for tracking your guys' expenses? Diana, do you use a credit card to track your expenses?
I do not.
Okay, so it's a tip that I definitely highly recommend for you to do. I use the Chase Sapphire, and I like that it gives me a whole breakdown of where all my expenses are going every single month. Okay, one of the biggest things that a lot of people are not focusing on is creating what I call a float account. I see Frankie's here. Hey, how's it going, Frankie? So Frankie, do you happen to have, or do you know what we call a float account? Probably having some issues connecting, but a float account is very important, and I highly recommend this. A float account is basically not a savings account, because a savings account is something that you don't want to touch. But a float account is a certain amount of money that you have saved in case something occurs. I mean, right? A lot of times there's issues that occur, emergencies. Just the other day, one of my windshields got broken, and that cost me a couple $100. So it's good to have in case you have a broken windshield, you have leaky pipes, or anything that's going to happen around the house where you're going to incur additional expenses. I call it a float account. Some people call it an emergency account. So you want to make sure that you have a certain amount saved just for those occurrences. My recommendation is you want to have 3 times of what your survival number is. So survival number is what I refer to as what it's the amount of money that you need to generate every month in order to cover your entire expenses, household expenses, your bills, credit cards, food, things like that. So if your expenses are, let's just say, $10,000 a month overall, you want to have 3 times that number in your float account. So you want to have about $30,000 set aside just in case for an emergency and anything that occurs. Now, one of the things is we always want to make sure is you're using your retirement account as much as possible and putting everything that you can into those retirement accounts. If you're self-employed and you don't have retirement accounts, you want to make sure that you're connecting with there's certain applications that you can use. Like I use Vanguard, where you can set up your own 401k, your own IRA, things like that. If you don't know how to use the retirement accounts, what I like about Vanguard is that they actually have AI built into it, where you just deposit your money per month, you select AI, and it does the investments for you. So it's a great way for you to do it. So these are things that you want to be tracking every single month, and it's going to help you to get towards financial freedom. Mutual funds and stocks are also huge, right? You don't have to start off with a large amount. I highly recommend against Vanguard. Vanguard, it's a great account that you can set up. You could deposit small amounts per month. So you could go say, if you know what you're going to be getting deposited per month, you can set aside 20% of your deposits per month. That's going to automatically transfer into your Vanguard account. And then the AI feature does it automatically for you, and basically it starts investing for you. So this year alone, just from a simple investment that I made of $50,000 into the Vanguard account, it's already produced me $4,000 over a period of 4 months. So it's generated me $1,000 a month in positive income. So you want to make sure you're using these features, this softwares, these things to help you out. So there's a lot of Americans out there who don't know how to financially become successful. And then it comes down to actually just managing everything, right? 70% of all Americans, they live paycheck to paycheck. So these are some huge stats that I know a lot of people are not focusing on, because why? They're just living day from paycheck to paycheck, day to day. Okay, so these are some stats that I'm going to provide for you guys so you guys can have. It'll be in part of the handout that we're going to give out at the end of the webinar. Okay, so how you can track expenses. Here's a breakdown. You definitely, when you start investing in your long-term wealth, there's 3 things that you need to have as far as accounts, right? You always want to have a checking account. You always want to have a savings account. And the other one that you definitely want to have is your money market account. The money market account, I highly recommend. They're going to give you a higher return on your investment, higher interest rate. And that's where you want to put your float account. So that's where you want to keep that money, and just for emergency situations, so that it starts to build, since you're just not going to be using it every month, just in case of an emergency. It's going to give you the highest return as far as interest that you're going to be receiving with the money that's there. So step number 2, you want to try to be as debt-free as possible, right? So credit cards tend to be what ends up impacting us and affecting us the most, because of the fact that we decide to charge everything. So with charging everything, you know, the credit card companies, they make a lot of money off the interest, and that's how we end up getting actually stuck. You know, I mentioned to you guys earlier about tracking. So if you're using a credit card that doesn't have a tracking feature of where all your finances are, basically where your expenses are going a month, I highly recommend to not use that anymore and get a credit card that gives you guys a breakdown. You will see, and for me, it was a shock when I was able to break down my amount of expenses and credit card, and it gave me a chart of how much was going towards food, how much, well, food, I'm not referring to food that I buy for the house. I'm referring to meals and entertainment, going out, spending at the restaurants. That was the majority of expenses. So I started reducing that a lot based off the tracking that I started doing. So, you know, there's a lot of information out there on mutual funds and how to invest it. I'm going to provide links for you guys. There's very good books. There's actually a show on Netflix that I started watching. And there's the author, he provided a book that I bought on Amazon for $15. That book right there itself has helped me do a lot well with the investments and the things that I'm doing. All right, so that's it.